Hello, fabulous fourth graders. So, if you've been following along, you may have seen that Miss Donahue, myself, and Mrs. Morse recently finished Classroom 13, the book 2 that was included in there. And we've decided to continue our read aloud, but jump to another book. So the book we've all chosen that we all have a copy of is Alan Strange. It's a Nickelodeon-based book. And it's called Invasion. And it says, can Alan save the planet? All right. So I'm going to start today with chapter 1. Each of us teachers are going to take a turn reading only one chapter because unlike Classroom 13, these chapters are a little bit longer. So it is like a regular chapter book. There's no pictures. But with the chapters being a little longer, we'll each take a chapter a day. So like I and any teacher typically recommends is I'm going to read the back of the book to you so that you have an idea of what it'll be about. All right. So here's the back. It says Alan Strange. Nothing's the same for Robbie and Josh Stevenson with Alan Strange around. Not even a trip to the Natural History Museum. The alien turned human is delighted with the exhibits showing the early days of his host planet until he recognizes the fabulous Mojave Diamond as an ancient Arubi signaling device. If it is activated, the diamond will call the insect-like aliens to colonize Earth and destroy human life. The device seems to be broken, but Alan protects it with a Xenon alarm to be safe. But Alan's alarm can't stop a burglar from stealing the diamond and accidentally activating the signal for the Arubi to land. Alan, Robbie, and Josh have only 2 hours to find and deactivate the diamond before the enemy aliens invade. It's a race against time to save the planet and keep Alan's secret safe. Here we go, chapter 1. So it looks as if each chapter obviously has a chapter number, and then it also gives a specific day and time, because as I read in the back of the book, it said they have 2 hours, so that timepiece is kind of important, and it's telling you where. So it's kind of giving the setting. The setting is highlighted at the beginning of each chapter, so the teachers will be sure to tell you if you're following along to make sure it all makes sense. So chapter 1, it's Friday at 8:17 p.m., which is at night, at the Stevenson House in Delport, California. Alan Strange, teenage alien in residence at the Stevenson House, sat cross-legged on the attic floor. The cluttered room was 11-year-old Josh Stevenson's workshop and hideaway, as well as Alan's domestic retreat. He still glowed with pleasure whenever he recalled Josh and Robbie's generous offer to take him in when he had first been stranded on Earth. He could not have requested a better site from which to study the planet and its human inhabitants, or for better friends than Josh and his older sister. At the moment, Josh was stretched out on the floor staring at him. His young host had asked for help with a written report for school about human evolution. Alan was eager to assist, especially since Xelons had saved the planet from a macrob takeover after the dinosaurs were eradicated, which had made it possible for mammals to flourish. Xelons had not had a lot of contact with Earth during the past million years. Consequently, he was intensely curious about how humans had evolved. However, judging from the confused look on Josh's face, the boy hadn't understood the question he had just posed. Alan repeated it. Is there an absent connection that mystifies scientists about human origins? Absent connection? Josh blinked, then brightened suddenly. Oh, you mean a missing link? Yes, Alan nodded. Xelons don't know what planet we came from or how we evolved. That will probably remain an unsolved mystery for all eternity. Bummer. Our scientists know we evolved on Earth, but they can't figure out exactly when. Scrambling to his feet, Josh pulled a cardboard box full of plastic toy critters out from under the workbench. He held up an 8-inch figure of a gorilla. Or prove absolutely that we're related to these guys. Alan took the fierce-looking plastic gorilla and turned it over and over in his hands. We're probably closer to chimpanzees than gorillas, though, Josh said. We have almost, but not quite, the same genetic code in our DNA. This creature does look sort of human. Holding up the gorilla, Alan cocked his head. Sort of, but don't tell Robbie you think so. Josh smiled. Telling a girl she looks like a gorilla won't win you any popularity points. I'll make a note, Alan said seriously. It's the same as drawing attention to abundant deposits of fat, right? Exactly, Josh chuckled. Alan sighed, as baffled by human reactions sometimes as Zeelan scientists were about Zeelan origins. He had learned the hard way that some humans were overly sensitive about certain things, like body weight. He had once overheard a pleasantly plump woman at Robbie's hair restructuring salon complain about gaining an additional few pounds. He had tried to compliment her, but apparently, observing that she had a better chance of surviving an ice age than her trimmer friends, had not been appropriate. Alan set the gorilla on the floor. Why can't Earth scientists prove the relationship between apes and humans? Nobody's found a fossil record. What's a fossil? Alan asked. Well, it's an imprint in rock of something that was alive a long time ago. Sitting back down, Josh flipped through his evolution reference book and pushed the open book toward Alan. Like this. Alan glanced at the picture of a fish skeleton impression in a flat stone. He placed his hand on the book. His hand and the book glowed as he absorbed the pertinent information directly from the text. Fascinating! Alan smiled when the data transfer was finished. The fish decomposed in mud that was turned to sedimentary stone by geological forces over a long period of time. The preserved imprint of its bones is a fossil. Right, Josh leaned forward. Our paleontologists haven't found any fossils that can absolutely trace human development all the way back to the apes. Alan listened attentively. Josh had been doing a lot of research on the subject and seemed anxious to share his recently acquired knowledge. Usually, Alan was the one who supplied information he had acquired as a young seeker on Zila. Zeelans had been exploring the universe and collecting data long before humans existed. Or even to the primitive men that lived before Homo sapiens first appeared 90,000 years ago, Josh went on. They're just assuming that's what happened until someone finds fossilized evidence that proves or disproves the theory. Your ancestors appeared 90,000 years ago? Alan frowned thoughtfully. Give or take a few thousand years. The cavemen didn't start talking or drawing on walls or farming and stuff until 20,000 years ago. Why? Josh frowned. Because the Arubi were looking for planets to develop around 100,000 years ago. Alan's frown deepened. And according to Zeelan historians, they came to this part of the galaxy. Josh shifted uncomfortably. Why is that a problem? Because the Arubi sent robot colonization ships throughout the whole galaxy, Alan explained very matter-of-factly. If one of those automated ships had sent out scout probes to Earth before an intelligent species evolved here, a horde of robots would have landed and built factories and cities for shiploads of Arubi colonists. Josh's eyes widened. Maybe the Arubi are the missing link. Alan grinned. I don't think so. For one thing, the Arubi didn't bother worlds that already had an intelligent species, not even if a race was in its primitive stages of development. For another, the Arubi looked like giant earth ants with modifications. There's no resemblance to humans at all. Compared to the Arubi, Robbie would rather be called a gorilla. Josh chuckled, then cocked his head. What kind of modifications? Let me illustrate. One of the things Alan liked best about Josh was that he wanted to know everything about everything, just like a Zeelan. Alan pulled the plastic critter box toward him and sifted through the pile of toys. There were robots, spaceships, dinosaurs, movie monsters, reptiles, and various insects, but no ants. He reached for Josh's notebook and a pencil. Here is your basic ant design. Alan drew a rough sketch of an ant's 3-segmented body. An Arubi stood around 4 feet tall, though. So in addition to a hard protective exoskeleton, they also had an internal skeletal structure, which they needed to support their size and weight so they wouldn't be squashed by high gravity. Right? Josh asked. Right. Them was a great film, except for that one little scientific mistake, Josh said. It's an old science fiction movie from the 50s about ants that got huge because of atomic radiation. An interesting concept. Maybe we could watch it later. Sure, Josh said, but a story about giant ants building a nest in a sewer is probably lame compared to your ant-like aliens. The Arubi. Alan drew 3 sets of appendages on the body. The Arubi also walked semi-upright. The lower legs functioned strictly as legs. The middle set functioned as legs when increased speed or additional balance was required. The top set had 3-digit pinchers, their arms and hands. And they had the usual insect-type eyes, mandibles, and antenna on their heads. Totally cool! Not if you met one in an unlit passageway, Alan said. However, since the Arubi are gone, that won't happen. They're extinct? Maybe. Alan absently pulled the insects and robots out of the box. They disappeared suddenly. Another theory is that they packed up and left for another part of the universe. Ha! I'll sleep better knowing that, Josh quipped. The important thing is that an Arubi robot ship didn't find Earth before the rise of rudimentary intelligence, or you wouldn't be here to sleep at all. Josh grimaced. They were that bad? Have you ever seen what 1,000 robots can do to an established environment? Alan asked. Can't say that I have. Robots do not deviate from their programmed directives. Arubi robots flattened everything to clear sites for Arubi buildings. Alan glanced at the 12-inch bipedal robot with tool attachments he held in his hand, then frowned thoughtfully. Do you want to see a demonstration? Sure, Josh grinned, in the interest of education. Of course. Alan put the foot-long robot in a pile with several other robots, assorted plastic bugs, and the gorilla for good measure. He placed his hands on the pile, and the toys glowed with blue light as he initiated an energy transfer. Whoa! Josh scooted backwards when Alan removed his hands. Although they retained their toy size, all the critters instantly came to life and began to untangle themselves with hisses, snarls, and futuristic whirring, grinding, motorized sounds. A large spider climbed onto a chair and began spinning a web. A flattened triangular robot rammed the cardboard box, punching a hole in it. Another robot started drilling a hole in the floor. Josh jumped up and shook a multi-jointed spider-like robot off his jeans. Ugh! How much damage are these things going to do before they turn back into toys? That's why we're doing the experiment, Alan said, to find out. Josh yelped as the mini gorilla jumped on his sneaker, roared, and bit into his shoelace. Pulling the sneaker off, he threw it and the attached gorilla into a pile of newspapers. I just hope the house is still standing when my dad gets home from his meeting. Alan nodded. That would be preferable to the alternative. Which is? Total destruction, Alan said. Josh winced as the tiny gorilla ran toward the stairs, dragging a length of chewed shoelace. Quite the intro to this story. Seems pretty fun, interesting. I hope you enjoy. I hope you continue listening. And Mrs. Morse, I believe, will pick up tomorrow with chapter 2. See you guys later. Happy reading. Happy listening.